I've backpacked across 37 countries, slept under stars in Mongolia, walked barefoot across temple ruins in Myanmar, camped on cliffs in Patagonia. But nothing, absolutely nothing, ever scared me the way a short whistle did in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. This isn't a travel blog story or some clickbait horror tale. My name is Aaron Wyatt. I'm 32, an ex-software engineer turned full-time nomadic content creator. I run a modest YouTube channel called Trail Truths, where I dive into lesser-known folklore from around the world. My goal was always to push boundaries, to go further, deeper, until I pushed into something that pushed back. It was my third week in South Africa. I'd done the garden route, saw the Big Five, did the tourist thing. But my real interest lay further inland, in the shadows. I wanted stories, local myths, the kind you only hear if you sit by the fire long enough and ask the right elder. That's how I ended up in a remote Xhosa village nestled somewhere in the Amathol Mountains, staying with a retired schoolteacher named Jabulani. His home was peaceful, perched on a hill with no fences, just wild brush, old trees, and a sky so big you feel like you could fall into it. On my first night there, over a dish of sampan beans, Jabulani casually said, "You can go walking, climb any hill, just don't whistle after dark." I blinked. Why not? Because it calls something old. He paused and added, "Tokoloshe." I smiled. I'd heard that name, a child-sized creature in Zulu and Xhosa mythology, hairy, mischievous, violent, known for creeping under beds and tormenting sleepers. "Right, the goblin?" I joked. Jabulani didn't laugh. "It's not a joke. It likes being noticed. If it knows you see it, it follows." I should have listened, but I didn't. The next evening, I climbed the ridge behind his house to capture a time-lapse of the sunset for my channel. The wind picked up. It whistled gently through the grass, and in a spontaneous moment of mimicry, I whistled back. 3 short, sharp notes. The sound echoed beautifully for a second, then stopped. The air felt completely still, like the sky was holding its breath. Something about the silence unsettled me, but I shook it off. As I walked back down, I kept hearing faint crunches behind me. Not constant, not loud, just enough to make me turn around more than once. Nothing there. I returned to the homestay after dark. Jabulani wasn't waiting on the porch like the previous night. I found him inside, standing by the window, staring out. When he saw me, he didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "You whistled." I was stunned. "How'd you..." "You brought attention," he said. "Now it knows you." That night, something scratched under my bed. At first, I told myself it was a rat. Maybe the old wood was creaking, but it wasn't random. It was rhythmic, sharp, intentional. I turned on my flashlight, nothing. I even checked under the bed, empty. Then around 2:30 a.m., I felt something tug the blanket at my feet. A definite yank. I shot up, heart hammering. The room was empty, but the wardrobe, which I was sure I had shut, was now slightly ajar. I closed and bolted it, laid back down. I didn't sleep until dawn. When I finally stepped outside the next morning, Jabulani was sweeping the porch. He didn't greet me, just looked at the ground, and I followed his eyes. There were footprints, bare, muddy, child-sized, leading from the bush to my window. "Maybe some kids playing pranks," I offered weakly. He didn't reply, just handed me a small bowl of salt. "Sprinkle it at your door and your window tonight." I laughed nervously, but I did it anyway. That night, I went to bed early. Salt lined the windowsill and doorway. The light stayed on. I stacked books against the wardrobe and even wedged my backpack in front of the door. But fear doesn't respect boundaries. I woke again at 3 a.m. The air felt wrong, ice cold, like someone had left a freezer open. I couldn't move. Not at first. It wasn't a quite sleep paralysis, and it felt like something outside of me was holding me still. I stared at the ceiling, then slowly tilted my head down. The blanket was sliding off my body, inch by inch. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. And then I saw it. Something was at the foot of the bed, a shape, small, stooped, covered in matted dark hair. It rose slightly, as if standing upright. I couldn't see a face, only two eyes, glowing, milky white, watching me with the calmness of something that knew it was in control. I gasped, and suddenly I could move. I scrambled backward, hitting the headboard, snapped the flashlight on. The room was empty, but the salt at the door had been disturbed, smudged, and my camera, always on the nightstand, was on the floor, lens cracked. I found a greasy black smear on the wooden floor beneath the wardrobe. Jabulani came running when I screamed. His dog wouldn't enter my room. It stood at the door, whining. We sat in silence until the sun came up. He made strong tea, then said one thing: "You have to leave before it decides you belong to it." I left that morning. No goodbye, no breakfast. I paid in cash, hitched a ride to East London, and booked a flight to Cape Town. I thought distance would fix it. It didn't. For the next 2 weeks, wherever I went, be it a modern hotel in the city or a beachside guest house, I felt watched. I'd wake in the middle of the night, certain something had touched my feet, blankets half off, lamps flickering. The worst were the dreams, always the same. I'd be lying in bed, frozen, while something short and hairy crawled slowly from under the bed and smiled at me. Every time I woke up in sweat. One night in Johannesburg, I found tiny muddy prints on the balcony of my 4th floor hotel room. I eventually saw a Sangoma, a traditional healer. She didn't ask questions, just looked me up and down and said, "You invited it with sound. It heard you, saw you, now it wants to be remembered." I asked how to get rid of it. "Don't speak of it, don't acknowledge it, don't feed it fear. It gets bored when you ignore it." So I stopped filming, stopped writing, stopped sharing this story. Until now. It's been 9 months. I sleep better, no dreams, the blankets stay on. But sometimes, just sometimes, when the house is quiet and the wind slips through the cracks, I hear a faint whistle, not mine, and I never, ever answer.